Okay, well, while everyone is slowly joining, I am going to kick us off with a few housekeeping items. I'm Megan Kimtek with ACT. I'm Director of Leadership and Awards, and I've been managing our webinars. So I am so excited today for our webinar that's from the student perception. So I will not take up too much of our time with these few housekeeping items, but with that, I just want to remind everyone of two upcoming webinars. Our next one in the Inclusion, Access, Equity, and Diversity series is on elevating the learner voice in CTE. It's on March 9th. You can register for it here. And then we have another one, another webinar in April. We are also working on a few other webinars that are paired with our Techniques magazine that are coming up in March and May. So check back on our website for these updates because we hope to see you on some of these upcoming webinars. With that, also, I know there are probably some non-members of ACTE, so this is my shout out that if you are now a non-member, we hope you'll consider joining our organization. You can find out more about that process here, or feel free to shoot me an email. I'll put my email in the chat and I can direct you with our membership director. With that, I am really excited to hand it off to our moderator today, Amanda. Dr. Amanda Bastoni is a research scientist at CAST. During her 20 plus years in education as a researcher, teacher, and career and technical education director, Amanda has focused on increasing equity and access for special populations in CTE. Specifically, she sought to use UDL to increase pathways for English language learners and females interested in exploring STEM careers. Most recently, Amanda has been working with agencies and organizations to remove barriers and utilize local assets to increase access to STEM for rural populations. Before working at CAST, Amanda was an accomplished career and technical education director and teacher with a proven record of achievement, including being named the 2019 New Hampshire CTE Leader of the Year. We are so lucky to have you here, Amanda, and also all our students who Amanda is going to introduce today. So I'm just full of gratitude for you all. So I will kick it over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Megan. I think most of all excited to have all of our participants here. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves first. So tell us your name, what CTE program you are in, and what state you're from. And I'm going to have Savannah, can you kick us off? And then we'll go to David next, then Naomi, and then Daniel and Ryan.
Hi, my name's Savannah. I'm from New Hampshire and I'm currently in a welding program.
Thank you so much, Savannah. All right, David, over to you.
Hello, my name is David. I'm from Massachusetts and I'm in the electrical program.
Great, thanks, David. Naomi?
Hi, my name is Naomi. I'm enrolled in a law and public safety program and I'm from New Jersey.
And these three students are at our secondary level, but we have with us also Daniel and Ryan from post-secondary. So if you guys could introduce yourselves to us, that'd be wonderful.
My name is Dan Coonfield. I'm in Colorado and I'm here for welding.
Thank you.
And that's my teacher.
And Ryan Phillips, welding instructor at Otero, Colorado, and also building another program for construction trades.
Perfect, great. Thank you all for joining us. And I have spent some time talking with each of our panelists separately. So I'm going to ask some questions and then direct it to specific panelists. However, again, guys, it's always open if you want to chime in. And also we're asking everyone who's on joining us today, if you have any questions for our panelists, specific or general, please don't hesitate to put those in the chat because we would love to have this be an interactive, engaging conversation. The topic of which is inclusion, access, equity, and diversity. And how do we make sure that we're designing our CTE programs at both the secondary and post-secondary level so that all learners feel comfortable, have access, and feel included. So our first question is going to go to Savannah and Naomi. So this is a part 3 webinar. And we've had educators already talk about how they've been trying to bring IAED issues in to the forefront and try to address those issues in their classrooms. Maybe, Savannah, we could kick off with you. Could you describe a time you or someone you cared about experienced conscious or unconscious isms in the classroom and what impact that had on your learning?
Sure, yeah. I think most present that comes to mind is just like I had an instructor describe something that wasn't like in a great manner, call it gay. And I'm the only female in the class and also the only queer. So it was just a very awkward, what do I do? What do I say? Kind of outcast moment of just like, oh, let's laugh it off, I guess, because this is supposed to be funny. It was awkward.
Yeah, and Savannah, you also talked to me a little bit about being the only female in your manufacturing class for a little while and the experience of that. Do you feel comfortable telling us a little bit about what that was like?
Sure. It's frustrating when immediately in any class, if you are the only female, instead of being like, look, this is a class with 17 guys. Wow. It's like, look, this is a class that has a girl. Like they point you out. They're like, you're the only one. Do you know? Did you know? And it's like, thanks for telling everybody again. Like I'm already here and it's uncomfortable enough. And on top of that, none of the gear fits me. The helmets are falling off of my head because they're too big and I look like a fool. So it's pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, Savannah, that's a really good point for our viewers to remember. It's hard to be a singleton, right? It's hard to be the only one, fill in the blank in a classroom. And so thank you for your courage to describe what that's like. I never thought about the gear before, Savannah.
Yeah, I look ridiculous in most of my welding gear.
Because it's just too big and doesn't fit properly.
Yeah, the sleeves go like that far past my hands. The gloves are massive. The small ones are old and have holes in them. So, I mean, they're working on it. They're trying to get new gear that I can use and that other women can use. But it wasn't a very inclusive setup at first.
Thank you, Savannah. Thanks for sharing that. Naomi, I'd like to turn it over. Same question to you. Could you describe a time you experienced or saw someone else experience conscious or unconscious isms in the classroom, and what effect did that have on your learning?
So yeah, when you first posed that question to me initially, I thought of a childhood friend of mine who was thinking of applying to the same school I go to, but for a different program. However, as part of the application process, you have to take a lot of standardized testing, and my school is unfortunately not very accommodating to those with learning disabilities. And my friend does happen to have a learning disability, and so she was very discouraged by this fact, and she ended up not applying at all. This is like a very specific instance, but it kind of jumped out at me because I think that CTE programs have proven to be beneficial for a lot of people, and I don't think that just the people who can perform well on standardized testing should have access to this kind of education. I guess it impacted me because I was upset that she was discouraged, and I felt bad that other students could be in that sort of situation.
Thank you, Naomi. That's really, really helpful to know about. So I'm going to keep going, but Savannah, I just want to point out that Fran said, Savannah, thank you for being you. So really getting some love from the audience, and also everyone in the audience, just remember, if you have any questions along the way, we'd love to hear it from you. So you can go ahead and put those in the chat. So this question, I'm going to turn to David and then over to Ryan and Daniel. So what can CTE educators do to remove barriers? Naomi talked about this a little bit, that application process, what it's like when people try to apply. But so David, I'd like to ask you first, what can CTE educators do to remove barriers to accessing CTE classes and make sure all students feel safe to enroll and be part of the program? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience, David.
Right. So for me, I really didn't know about this in the beginning until Amanda brought it up to me. And I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to experience. But the problem is, a lot of kids don't know about it. And so I think what an idea would be good is that, for me personally, I feel like when you're in school, it's not a safe environment. It tries to be, but it's not always. So how do I put this? Damn, sorry, I'm getting the jitters, but
You're doing great, David. One of the things we talked about when we did the one-on-one interview was making sure that there's promotion so that you can know, and also
Yeah.
that the school you're at currently knows that it's an opportunity for you. Maybe just, that was a hard process, right? To go through.
Yeah. I think one of the ideas I was thinking about before this was, personally, me, I feel like in school, a guidance counselor is somebody I can really trust. And so when you have like these teachers and just saying like, before in my middle school, we had the Northeast come in, and we all sat in a big auditorium, and they talked about like, oh, we have these programs, we do this, but they didn't really explain like, oh, you don't have to go to college after this, depending on what program you do. There's a bunch of benefits that go, you can join a union, you can do all this. And they really just did like a quick like presentation. But I feel like if the teachers at these schools were to really know about this, or your guidance counselors, because I feel like that's the one person I can really trust at my school. I feel like if they were to really know about it and like talk to us about it and like show us the benefits of what it is to go to this school, or just to follow your regular college route, I think it would be better to remove a lot of those barriers.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, David. And also, David, maybe you could tell us, I know that you have had to translate for your parents' school forms. So do you think there could be some benefit to having forms translated into different languages? And what do you think those benefits would be?
I think it'd be amazing because I'm not that fluent in Portuguese. So obviously I can't translate word by word for what they say. And so if there were other things available in other languages, or if like teachers themselves like could contact the parents and like know if they don't speak perfect English, find a way for them to like find out about all this information in their own language, they could really understand and know what's better for their kids. Because if I were to explain all this to my mom, just try and translate, she wouldn't understand a word I'm saying.
Thank you, David. That's really great. Okay, so this one's over now, Daniel, to you and to Ryan. So Daniel, what do you think CTE educators could do to remove barriers so that everyone feels safe enrolling in joining in CTE programs? And Daniel, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience with Ryan.
Well, I think the most that they could do is probably accommodate people like women, so that if they're in the welding program per se, like she is, that all the PPE fits her perfectly, because it really should. It's personal protective equipment, so it has to protect her alone, so that's the only thing I can think of. They need to accommodate each student that way. Look at them if they're female or if they're male, basically if they need help with anything, then they need to speak up and the teacher needs to help them, like me and Ryan do. Anything that I need, I just let Ryan know and he helps me.
Great. And so maybe Ryan, you could chime in a little bit at this point. Daniel, you are a wheelchair user, and I know Ryan, you went through, you wanted to make your class accessible to everyone, including Daniel. Maybe you could tell us some of the steps you took to try to make sure your class would be accessible for all.
Excuse me. So the initial step was to really work with our ADA coordinator. And it seemed like all of our higher administration really put all of this burden on me, knowing what my shop requirements really should be, how they needed to be. But then I felt like it was them needing to tell me what they, so there was a little bit of a miscommunication initially. But anyway, I went ahead and took the lead on that. And I reached out to our ADA coordinator, and we just did a quick walkthrough of the shop, quick being about 2 hours, before we went on summer break, knowing that Daniel was going to be coming in August. We did the registration, I think, in March or April, and I started working on just the ADA components of that, from the entry to the building. And what we did is we kind of put ourselves in Daniel's position and went through. Well, initially we couldn't even get the doors open because we didn't have push buttons. So we started there and just went through the entire shop in that manner. And I'm still continuously trying to make improvements or modifications to whether it's equipment. I just ordered a piece of equipment that has a foot pedal on it. Well, Daniel's gonna really have a hard time using that piece of equipment. So I ordered a hand control switch, and I got an electrician come in. He's like, we'll wire them, we'll hardwire them together, and we just make those modifications as we need, as they come up. It's really hard to foresee all situations, but as they come up, we're trying to be pretty prompt to accommodate. So anywhere from equipment to PPE, mentioned to you that we got that stand-up wheelchair. We just feel like we need to take care of, there is a place in all of our CTE programs for all individuals, not based on any discrimination.
And so Daniel, maybe this is the last question for you, and then we have another one for the rest of the panelists. How did that feel when Ryan and team went and, got that stand-up wheelchair? What was that impact on your ability to learn?
Well, it made it a lot better for me to concentrate on my bead when I was welding, because I could stand up like everybody else. I could be like other people. So, and with that chair, it straps my shoulders in. So I have full movement on both of my arms and I have no problem. So
Awesome.
It's really good.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Daniel, so much. So now I'm going to switch questions really quick, but I just want to remind everyone in the audience, if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. I know that our panelists are definitely interested in hearing from all of you. So this is for Naomi and Savannah. And also, again, David and Daniel, if you want to join in, please feel free. Why is it important for individuals in the classroom to accept responsibility for their actions and how their actions could contribute to bias? And Naomi, I'm going to throw this one to you. And when we talked, you talked about the students accepting responsibility and then what the impact of a teacher that you noticed doing a really great job. So maybe you could tell us those two stories, and then Savannah, will go to you.
Yeah, so starting from sort of like the peer perspective, I took into consideration like the fact that I think that oftentimes as high school students or just learners in general, we underestimate the impact we can have on our peers. And so that kind of goes in two ways. Number one, should I answer the question? I was just in the chat, or should I keep it?
So let's finish your question here, and then we'll let Savannah speak, and then we'll go to Tracy's question.
All right. So first of all, like if you're like a bystander in a situation, that has a lot more of an impact than you may think. Not only does it further create an atmosphere of acceptance for bad behavior, but it also sort of it shows to the person who's being impacted by one of the isms that were described before, like it shows that you maybe don't care. And like even if you're not intentionally contributing to the harm, you have a lot more impact than you think. But in a positive way, you can also hold your peers accountable and foster like positive change. From the teacher perspective, I mean, the instance that stood out to me was a big like topic right now is the topic of like pronouns and asking for them. And so at the beginning of the year, my teachers all sent out a form because to ask for the pronoun usage. Now, a lot of those teachers then followed up with students who didn't identify with their gender as gender assigned at birth. They would still use the pronouns that were not those that they had indicated on the form. But I have one teacher, specifically my history teacher, who went out of his way to like actually use the pronouns that people, have indicated to him. And that really made like me feel like, okay, well, look, this is a tolerant environment. And I know that people are going to be respected here.
Awesome, Naomi. Thank you so much. And Savannah, I know you did have a teacher who supported you with some questions that you had around, some experiences you had that were negative, and then you had a teacher maybe who supported you. Do you want to tell us maybe a positive experience when a teacher or a peer, accepted responsibility for their actions or supported you in the way that we were just describing?
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have a lot of teachers that do go out of their way to send out such forms as like pronouns and preferences. I haven't had any complications with that in classes, but there was one time last year that a student just repeatedly making like the most homophobic comments for no reason. Like they were playing a card game and they were frustrated, and a student called them out like in front of everybody. And the person kept going, and then the teacher was further backed up the student that called them out and was like, what are you doing? Why are you saying these things? And it turned into a very good conversation that I think was honestly really beneficial for everybody watching. I was in a class where it was only guys. And I feel like at my school, the expectation is like, they don't care, it doesn't matter to them. And then like all these kids left their class being like, I'm gonna do better, I'm gonna be better. And it just felt very like the next day, I wasn't worried about anything. I wasn't worried about like what they were going to talk about. It was just very helpful and beneficial to know that the teacher didn't call out anybody in specific or even say like, how do you think this could be affecting this person if they know that like they're queer? It wasn't a call out. It was just, your behavior is wrong. Like you need to change it. This is harsh. So that was nice to not feel called out, even if they're not talking to me. It's like, doesn't matter if I'm gay or not, what they're saying isn't okay.
Yeah, and Savannah, the research does show that we can't learn when our brains are in fight or flight or fear mode. And so I think it's really important what you're pointing out is the next day, once this was addressed, you were really able to return and learn and feel calm and really focus on the learning at hand. So thank you so much. I'll just turn it, I want to have David answer this question, and then Daniel, if you are interested as well. Just, David, I know that you've had very positive experiences in your CTE classroom, but when we talked, you talked about how you have had some of your peers that speak the same language natively as you, and that has helped you in certain situations. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. In the beginning of the year, I was in 2 shops. I was first in metal fab, which I think is which Savannah is also in. And now I'm in electrical. So both shops, I had similar experiences, and where like the kids, I was fortunate enough to have a pretty good classroom where it wasn't just the teacher helping me out, but if I had any problems, I could turn to my fellow peers and they would also help me and address, because I did join in electrical. I joined in a couple months late. So I was behind schedule and everything, but after talking to some of the kids who speak the same language as me, it was easier to understand some of the material, and they really like sat there with me. And I didn't need to have like a teacher present all the time to know that like I could still learn. I could turn to my fellow peers, and it would also help me. And then in metal fab, it was the same situation. I joined in the beginning of the year. I was a new student, sophomore year. I didn't really know what was going on. And then once again, I had one, Nathan. He was also Brazilian, and I really like stuck to him. He was like my buddy, and he just really like helped me out. Like God let me get used to the environment, introduced me to everybody, and he was like not one person who like opened the doors for me and like really let me get comfortable with everything. So yeah.
Yeah, and so what I hear you saying, David, is one peer can really help set the stage for feeling like you're important, you're included, you're wanted in this class, you're a part of the class, even if you join late, even if you didn't start with us at the beginning of the year. Daniel, I'd love to hear. I know that you've had a very positive experience in Ryan's class, but I'd love to know, how have your peers helped you, or have your peers made an impact on that positive experience? And then you guys, I'm going to stop with my questions, and we have about 6 minutes left, and I want to make sure I ask a couple of the audience questions, and whoever would like to answer can just answer. So Daniel, maybe just turn to you. What has the experience been of your, when you have support from your peers?
The experience has been very good, because any question I've had, they've answered. And if none of my peers could answer it, Ryan can. So all I have to do is ask him. So I have had no problems at all.
Awesome. Okay, good. Good. So actually we can go a little bit longer. Ryan, what's your, have you actively as an educator, actually I want to pause here for a second, Ryan. when we were talking, you shared that there is still some changes you personally want to make to your classroom to make the classroom even that much more accessible for Daniel. Would you mind sharing just one sort of self-reflection you've had recently?
I guess, like I said, there's constant changes, and as those situations come up, the most recent was that hand control for the equipment. Knowing that wasn't going to be something to be accessible, Daniel's getting ready to go into our layout and fab class where it's all using shears, punches to prep. They cut out and weld up a fire pit for the project, and they have to use all those equipment. I didn't want Daniel to feel like he wasn't able to use the equipment and always having to ask for somebody else to do it for him, because one, Daniel is a very independent individual, and we established that within the first couple of conversations, and I know that about him. So he doesn't want to rely on somebody else. So in order to make that shop accessible, I have to constantly find ways that we can, and it's modifying a cutting table to be accessible, modifying the iron worker with the hand control, modifying even the weld booths initially, going back when I set up the program, they're fully adjustable for height for all individuals. So that wasn't really a barrier, but just those modifications are a constant change. And it's really nice to be able to see, especially the initiative that Daniel brings, with the situation, to be that self-independent, motivated person that wants that.
Yeah, that's great. And Ryan, I know you talked a little bit about also trying to make yourself more accessible. So in the class, you shared that a lot of times students can just come over and ask you for help. But in Daniel's case, how do you make sure that you as an educator are even accessible to him?
So that's something that we're still trying to figure out the best way, because there are places in the shop that are a little less accessible for Daniel to get a wheelchair into. If I'm working on a project back, even in the tool room, or, right now I've got a 27-foot trailer, it's a little harder for Daniel to get around some of that because of the tight spaces. If we have our back to the work area because of our own work area, we don't know that Daniel's there. It's loud, so I don't know if we need to go to a buzzer, doorbell. I don't know. I mean, we're exploring some of these options so that when he does need that, we can try to be more accessible to him.
Yeah, great, Ryan. And I just love that you're thinking about it, right? You're thinking about it with Daniel, and you're thinking about how do you make your classroom physically and also, in a dynamic way accessible. So, and I just want to say, I bet Savannah and David and Naomi would all agree that being independent is something they love to do too. They want to be able to work on their projects on their own and engage in the learning. And I think I'll speak as a female, I think sometimes that can be hard when you're in a class that you have no background in. So I'm just thinking, Savannah, if that's something that you've experienced where, you want to work independently, but maybe you've never welded before, and, how does that experience go when everyone's giving you advice potentially? I don't know, Savannah, I'll turn it over to you if you want to chime in.
Yeah, it was a bit of an awkward, I was everybody's little sister moment of almost an excessive amount of offering to help, which was really appreciated. And I understand exactly where they're coming from. I mean, I'm a new student, whether I'm a girl or not. But yeah, it was a little bit asking for help made me feel like I almost that little maiden in distress, oh, come help me. I don't know. It was awkward. It was really uncomfortable, especially since it is all these guys that are in my class, and I've known them for years. And it's just I think honestly, the biggest part for me is I'm worried that they're going to have judgment of me. It's you're a girl, and not that they would, but it's just there. And it's asking for help, I would really just rather go to the teacher, and that's what I do all the time. I just go to my instructor, and he's super helpful and honest with everything. But everyone else is oh, sure, I got you. Come here. It's just stop. I don't know. It's uncomfortable.
It can also be confusing, Savannah, when the students themselves don't know how to do it, but they're helping you. So you can be actually getting the wrong information, right? And so I appreciate you sharing that, Savannah. And I think, again, I'm just going to reiterate, it's really hard to be a singleton. Whatever that singleton is, fill in the blank. It's hard to be the only one, right? Who, in David's case, maybe the only one whose parents speak Portuguese at home, the only one who, female in a male dominated class, right? It's just hard to be the only one. Okay, I want to turn it over to the audience. There were some questions here, and one that I thought was really interesting was, have you had your CTE educators bring in guest speakers that you can relate to? So maybe guest speakers who whose native language is in English, guest speakers who have who need accessibility supports, or guest speakers who are females, and or what impact did that have on your learning? So when they bring in a guest speaker you could relate to. Does anyone have that experience or want to share? Naomi? Yeah, great.
So I'm pretty lucky in the fact that my CTE educator is actually a female. She's a retired police officer. And she does bring in guests quite often, but I've kind of had the opposite experience in which a lot of all of the guest speakers she's brought in have been male, except for one. And all of the males she's brought in have addressed the female students differently than the male students, which is interesting because my program is predominantly female. It's kind of a rare thing, but we have like a 4-to-1 ratio of girls to boys. And there's definitely a presence of almost like condescending when I ask a question versus when one of my male peers asks a question to a probation officer, or even we've had college professors come in and they're like, you young men, if you're interested in this field, it's like, why do you have to make the distinction there? There's no reason for it. And I'm surprised. It's surprising because I do have this female instructor who's very, successful, and although I do appreciate her bringing in these sorry, my cat is coming, these industry professionals, it's also a little disheartening when they do address you differently than your male counterparts.
Thank you, Naomi. Anybody else want to respond to that question from our audience about what it's like? Yeah, David, good.
Personally, all my teachers, they attended the school themselves, graduating, so they understand what it's like to be in our shoes. So they haven't really brought anybody out, but whenever we try to do those or make comparisons, they know what we're talking about. They've been in our shoes, they understand. They were in the exact same shop and the same boots we were in. So they understand where we're coming from, but at the same time, they grew up in a different environment. Education wasn't as advanced back then. There's different ways to deal with certain situations that they also might not know about. But I think it's good to know that they know what we're going through at some points, but then at the same time, they don't, because it was so different back then.
Yeah, good. And so acknowledging that. Yeah, Ryan, did you want to share? And
Yeah, just going back to bringing in guest speakers. I've actually had a very positive experience. The way we run the program here, we are with the students, 4 to 6 hours a day, and saying the same thing over and over. It just, you're always saying it. But when I bring in an industry, somebody else from industry, whether it's my welding supply shop, they come in and do safety presentations. Students hear that. Especially on a safety aspect from somebody else, it's like, oh yeah, you were saying that, but there's a change because somebody else has already said it too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just getting that the second confirmation that me as an instructor, I kind of know what I'm talking about at that point. It's just that encouragement to students to take that lead.
Yeah, that's great, Ryan. And we really do encourage people to bring in guest speakers. I just want us to, I'm trying to sort of also get us to stretch and think about who the guest speakers are that we bring in, and kind of making sure they're prepped to not reinforce some stereotypes that might exist. Savannah, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it really frustrates me whenever there is a guest speaker in a class, and it's almost assumed that it's going to be a male, and then if it's not, they're like, and look, a female. And it's just like, a guest speaker is a guest speaker. I mean, if you're a welder, you're a welder, and I'd rather it be just here's this person that has 5 years worth of experience. They know what they're doing. They've done this whole startup company. Respect them, whether or not they're male or female or anything else.
Yeah, thanks, Savannah. That's great. So I want to say there is something in CTE called we have special populations. And so we try to think about making sure that we have representation from all types of learners, all kinds of learners in our classes, to sort of make sure that everyone has access, like Naomi said earlier, to CTE, because it can be really beneficial. So we had a question, which was, how do we support 8th graders thinking about taking CTE programs? And especially when you think about having them take CTE programs that maybe aren't as traditional. Would you guys have any advice? So I'd love to hear from all of you, sort of what would your advice be around helping 8th graders know about the program and think about taking the program? So David, like, you know, what would have helped you when you were in 8th grade to know about CTE? And Savannah and Naomi and Daniel, what would have helped you think about taking a certain CTE program? And we can kick it off to whoever. David, yes, thanks for volunteering, David.
Me personally, what like intrigued me about this was that I don't have to go to college after this. You know, personally for my shop, I can graduate with my diploma in electrical, and then I also have to do some experiences and take my ocean, do all that. But if I initially for me, if you tell students you don't have to go to college, I think that's like a big major trait why a lot of people go to these schools. Because I know a lot of kids in my shop, they're going in to do it so they don't have to go to college. You know, a lot of people don't want to work a 9 to 5 hour job. They don't want to have to be in debt, do 4 years of more studying, more school, where you can go to this school and then already get your education, go out and start working, already be having your bread. And something we have in our school, we have co-op. So during senior year for shop week, you can go out, make your money instead of being in school. I think that's also a great way to encourage kids to attend these schools. Because for me, once I heard that too, it was a 100% I'm going to the school. So yeah.
Good. So David, so you're saying talk about the career opportunities much earlier. Good. Naomi, you had your hand up.
I definitely agree with what David said. I mean, similarly, my program's a little different. It's not a traditional vocation, but it still presents me with a lot of opportunities. For example, in senior year, I'm able to take college courses like through my county college, which is a great opportunity that I only knew about through my own research and having to talk to people myself. One of the biggest issues I have personally with the way that my school had been marketed to my home district, my middle school, was that they were actually not allowed to send representatives because my home school didn't want people leaving to go to VOTEC, which is what the vocational school that I go to. So instead of being encouraging and promoting it, I even had teachers tell me not to go, say you should stay, you shouldn't leave, that's not a good decision, instead of saying embracing that was the pathway I was choosing. So I guess promoting the opportunities and also accepting and being encouraging of students who do want to pursue a career path and know that a CTE education would be beneficial for them.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in. That was David's, not to, speak for you, David, but I know that was a bit of your experience as well. Just your homeschool, not, almost discouraging you, but at the very least, not encouraging you to choose this alternative or this, other option. Good. Yeah, Ryan. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan. Would you like to sort of, we have a few more minutes, and Ryan, would you like to ask the panelists a question? I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, actually I would, just because of me being an educator. David, you refer back to, not wanting to go to college or get that college degree or have a 2-year program. My welding program is underneath the 2-year college here in Colorado. Would it be more beneficial for us to promote this more of a trade school rather than, your typical college aspect? Because we are really just a trade school. And as I'm building the construction trades, it's still under the college, but what kind of promotion would be more beneficial to get that same information and awareness out as a trade rather than college? Because my welding students here, they only have to take a math course. It's math for welders, and I actually teach that one. So I teach all their courses that they're going to be in. They don't have to have any English, history, science. They don't have to have any of that core. So would that be something to promote differently?
Yeah,
Do I
Dave.
respond to that?
Oh yeah, yeah, go ahead. You can answer it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think so, but like, I think a lot of a big major issue too is like money. So for college too, like I don't want to attend college because I know I'm gonna be in debt too. And so knowing that this school will save me from all that debt, will save me from years of studying, will save me from doing a bunch of things. And also my dad's an electrician. So once I'm out of the school, I can go and I can help him in his company. And I'm already like learning some of it. But I also was in a metal fab in the beginning of the year. And I wanted to say this earlier, but in our school, they do provide PPE, right? They provide the equipment, but we ourselves, we do have to go out and buy them for sophomore year. So they provided for the freshmen, but since I joined sophomore year, I came into the school already having to buy all my equipment and do all that stuff. But then you buy a welding helmet for $300, you do something else like that, it saves you from years and years of debt and having to go to college and then doing all that stuff.
Yeah, so I think what I hear David saying, Ryan, is really just to, in CTE, it's college and career, right? We believe college and career are both equally important pathways. And what we don't want to do is close any doors. We want to open doors for learners. So at some point, David may choose to go to a 2-year electrical program, or Savannah might choose to go to a 2-year welding program, or Naomi might go to a 4-year, criminal justice program. All pathways, what I heard them saying, all pathways should be valuable, right? We should place value on whichever pathway the learner is interested in, and we should make sure that we're showing them the doors that we're opening for them. And I think that's what I heard David saying as well. So there was another question. What do you guys think about, let me just go back really quickly. Naomi, this was a question. I'd love to hear you guys, what kind of application process, or was there application process that was required for your CTE program, to get into your CTE program? What was required of you to get into the school or get into the program? Maybe we could start with you, Naomi, and then we could go to David and then Savannah and then Daniel.
So yeah, so my school is like a county school, so kids from all over the county apply. It's like a basic application, name, address, that sort of thing. Then once you have that basic information, you're enrolled in this program. Now it's changed a little bit because of COVID, but when I was applying, you had to go to the school to take a standardized test, the ACT, and that was like a basic math and a basic English to get in. Only the people who got above a certain score were admitted into the next phase of the application process, which is an interview. It's not like an interview as you would typically think. They do ask you questions about yourself, but it's supposed to see your a couple things: your basic knowledge entering into your field, as well as your ability to collaborate with others. So they give you a targeted task for your specific academy. So for my case, for law, we had to write a law for a specific scenario. The part that was concerning to my friend who had a learning disability was the standardized testing, because it wasn't accessible. They weren't making accommodations for people with learning disabilities. And so she felt she couldn't even progress past the first stage of the application process.
And Naomi and I talked about this. If we're not careful about our application processes, what about learners who are homeless, right, and move a lot? Maybe they don't have someone to write a reference for them, or maybe they don't have great grades or attendance records because they've been moving so much, right? But that doesn't mean they wouldn't be an excellent welder. So we really have to think about what are the gatekeeping mechanisms that we have built in. And David, not to keep harping on this, but your experience was not a lot of support from your school around even how to fill out that. What school did you even go to? What application did you need to fill out, right? You had to do a lot of digging into that.
Yeah, I think it was you really did help me up a lot on that, because I had no idea what to do. we sat together, we did my resume, we contacted the school. It was weeks and weeks of like meeting together and then like finding a way to contact the school. Because once it's really hard to transfer back into that school once it's like sophomore year. They usually accept kids freshman year and then they close the doors on that. They don't let you back in. But I think like pushing, saying that I used to attend Lynn, the Linden STEAM Academy school, and then like adding all this advocating for me to get into the school, it really helped. But then also once I did get into the school, I was placed in Metal 5 and I wanted to go to electrical. And then it was a whole other process of trying to get into that shop and then, advocating that my dad was an electrician. I know most of the things, I'll be able to catch up quick. It was just like a whole lot of stuff that I didn't even know about I needed to do. And so somebody like you helped me out.
Yeah, so it really took this really intense advocacy to make sure that we could enroll David. So Naomi, Savannah, I'd love to give you a last chance to sort of share, if you had advice for CTE teachers and CTE administrators who are on this call listening to us, and they're thinking about inclusion, access, equity, and diversity. Like what advice, what's your one piece of advice you want to give them? And then Daniel, I'm going to throw it over to you. So
I'd say in my experience, the biggest thing would be promotion. I mean, if a teacher is looking for more students and looking to teach more people, then they need to let the whole school know. I mean, there's been a lot of trips I've seen up to my school for elementary schoolers and middle schoolers, teaching them that CTE exists. I mean, my whole freshman year, I didn't even know what CTE meant. So the school counselors are a big, big help. I mean, mine really didn't know much about any of the programs. They didn't know that I had to take 2 years worth of manufacturing so that I could take my welding course. And I don't know who that is on really, but definitely just whoever's going to be building the students' schedules for their school years, they need to know that they have the options for these classes that are going to help them in the future.
Right, and maybe not making assumptions about which classes a student might be interested in, Savannah. I mean,
yeah, definitely. The questioning of like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, yeah. Also, the required courses that I've experienced at my school get in the way a lot. I mean, it's like, okay, well, you need to take 4 math classes. Okay, well, then that only leaves me room for 1 manufacturing class,
Yeah.
Things like that. The priorities, they're weighed differently, but it doesn't make much sense to me how they are.
Thank you, Savannah. Daniel, what about you? We're gonna leave with some advice. What's your advice here for us?
Well, I haven't had any, the main thing that I can think of, or the most important thing to me, is attendance. You can't learn anything if you're not there. So you have to be willing to learn and be there whenever you're required to, all the time. That's all it takes. And you have to, you have to be open, to say if you need help. Unlike me, I'm bad about that. But if you need help, you need to let somebody know. And that's basically it.
Yeah, and Daniel we talked about transportation. He lives close to the school, so he's able to travel to his school using his wheelchair. But if there was transportation, this is another webinar, but transportation can be a big inclusion, access, equity, and diversity issue. So Megan, we're about at 3:18. I wasn't sure if this was the right time to think about closing or what your thoughts were.
Yeah, this has been so enlightening. Y'all did such a great job, and you were so honest and just really great. We really appreciate all the insightful knowledge and advice for our educators. So I just want to mention again that this will be recorded and posted on our website. So if any of you all panelists or the attendees want to share it with anybody, it's a common question we received. And I just want to thank everyone, especially you, Amanda, for putting this together, and to our panelists, students today. We're so excited for y'all to go into CTE and for everyone being here. So with that, I'm going to close. So thanks again to all our attendees as well, and hopefully we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.